Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist. It's been an historic week in Indiana politics with the abortion debate in the state Senate. The delayed vote happened Saturday afternoon. The Senate approved the abortion ban 26-20, the bare minimum of votes for the bill to pass. The bill that heads to the House includes exceptions for rape and incest and the life of the mother. The plan has not gotten overwhelming support from State House Republicans.
This bill is a framework, it's an outline, it's going to the House now, and I think they'll flesh in some of the things that were brought up in the questioning, brought up in the debate. I think it's important we keep our minds open and we keep the ideas flowing. I don't think this is the end result by any means. I think we have a lot of good people over in the House who want to express their opinions and also reach a result that they feel comfortable with. I don't think anyone on this floor had an easy time with that bill. Clearly, you could see that from their faces, you could see it from their comments, and to say that they didn't take into consideration some of the feelings, some of the opinions that were expressed is just not true. We've seen several polls over the last few months, and that's not the only poll nor the only result that we've seen. I think that we seize on ones sometimes that agree with the direction we want to go, and then we disregard others. I think there are vast differences of opinion, and that goes to the people on the street, the people in this building.
The vote today was not about Hoosiers. It was about power in this body called the General Assembly. How do you bring an issue back with 39 members and only get just enough votes to get it across?
I also want to show you the scene we witnessed outside the chamber yesterday. Large crowds gathered inside the State House, and you could hear them yelling throughout the more than 3 hours of debate. And when the final votes were over and senators were leaving the chamber, we also saw some abortion rights supporters following Republican State Senator Mike Young to the State House elevators. Let's welcome in Democratic State Senator Shelley Yoder. Senator, thank you for joining us. Does this process feel rushed to you?
This process absolutely feels rushed. It's undoing 50 years of precedent, and we are taking away a woman's right to personal autonomy and access to health care. So absolutely it feels rushed, and it's unnecessarily rushed.
On the Senate floor on Saturday, you shared your own story of a pregnancy that you considered terminating. You ultimately chose not to do so. Tell me about your decision to share that story publicly.
I was so heartened by the many, many hundreds of Hoosier women that came forward and were sharing their stories. Every single story is different. And I know that people who choose to carry a pregnancy, choose to have an abortion, choose to place for adoption, choose to make an unthinkable decision if they are wanting the pregnancy and have to look to abortion in order to deal with the many complexities that they are faced with. I felt compelled to stand with them and to share my own story, which was one that I found myself pregnant, not married, very, very confused as to what I should do, made to feel ashamed, made to be wondering if I can make it. And so we need to give women time and the choice to make sure that they can access the healthcare that they deserve. And what this bill does is take that access to health care away.
Is there a chance that nothing ends up passing this session because Republicans are so divided?
Is there a chance? I have no idea. This bill is not supported by anyone. If you look across time in the Senate, I have never seen a bill that has absolutely zero support outside of one author. And the author herself said she doesn't even support the bill. Not one Hoosier came out in support of this bill to testify. And yet we voted it through the Senate by a vote. This is not legislation that Hoosiers want. And we knew it going into this special session. And we certainly knew it yesterday when we voted it through the Senate.
The Senate Minority Leader at the end of that vote, or immediately following the vote, rather, said he's already looking ahead to November on this issue. How well do you see this playing with voters, given that they'll also have inflation and other issues on their plates?
We need voters engaged on every issue. We need them at the polls. But what has happened with reversing a woman's access to health care in Indiana, it needs to light a fire underneath every single one of us to motivate us to make sure that our elected officials are not just voting on a whim, but they're voting based on science, they're voting based on their constituents, and they're voting based on what we need in order to access health care. So absolutely, we need to see people at the polls. One thing that came up during this debate was Indiana wants access to abortion care. But what came through loud and clear was that Republicans in our excessive majority want to deny a woman's access to care, want to deny a woman's personal autonomy, want to deny a person's opportunity to take care of herself and her family and make those decisions with her healthcare provider. What this piece of legislation does, it's putting both women and the medical providers in this state at serious risk.
Senator Shelley Yoder, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The bill faces significant opposition on both sides of the abortion debate. Let's show you this from Indiana Right to Life. The group president says serious issues remain with SB 1, including loopholes that will allow most abortions to continue in Indiana and even a rollback on some protections that currently exist for the unborn. We're hopeful these concerns will be fixed in the House and that SB 1 will become a bill we can support. As it stands today, we remain opposed to SB 1. And this statement from IU Health, the state's largest health care provider. The bill's restrictions on a physician's ability to do what is medically proven and appropriate for the life and health of a pregnant patient, plus the threat of criminalization, impact our ability to provide safe and effective patient care and could deter physicians seeking to live and practice health care in Indiana. Now, we also asked U.S. Senator Todd Young on Friday morning before the final vote what he wanted to see happen in Indiana's abortion debate. His answer, it shows how messy the democratic process can be.
Rather than delegating this decision to a panel of experts who are unelected, the American people are deciding this issue. It's remarkable to me that we've seen a group of individuals emphasize the structural anti-democratic bent we have in this country and lament that we don't have a democracy that is direct enough. And then on a really important issue that we're asking the American people to deal with, they don't want it to be up to the people. It's too important to be left up to the people. Well, we're restoring the ability of people to rule themselves, to be citizens in a republic, and that's messy. And they may get it right. They may not get it exactly right in the beginning, but I want to support those legislators and state officials, and frankly, everyone involved in these difficult conversations.
Coming up, Indiana's best political team breaks down the abortion debate and what might happen next here on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Drew Anderson and Abdul Hakim Shabazz, conservative commentator and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Drew, let's start with you. We heard Senator Shelley Yoder share her own story of a pregnancy she considered ending. Does this prompt other women to come forward? How does this shape the debate?
I think at the end of the day, it hopefully makes everyone come forward. And I want to come forward too, because this policy itself, the rape and incest provision, those poor kids, those poor little girls, they're not going to be able to actually come forward and get an abortion on time, because here's how it works. I'm a survivor of incest myself. And at the end of the day, those attackers, they brainwash those kids into telling them that if they speak up, they are literally breaking the family apart and they're doing something bad. So they already have that over their head. And then on top of that, these girls are 10, 11 years old. They don't know what it means to be pregnant or what's going on in their bodies. So the courage it already would have to take for them to speak up and to admit what happened to them, which is horrible, and then to have the abortion, there's not going to be a lot of time. But then the final problem, which is this policy will make these girls have to sign an affidavit, and then they're going to have to get it notarized. So they're going to be victimized from start to finish. And at the end of the day, Republicans are doing this because they want to force these girls to have their attacker's baby. So everyone needs to come up and step forward and share their story, because this is how extreme the Republicans are going. And we need to all come together and to show the Republicans that they need to listen to their own polling and not extremist organizations like Right to Life.
Abdul, you and I were both in the Senate chamber for the floor debate. We saw how bitterly divided Republicans were over those rape and incest exceptions. Does this ultimately sink the bill?
Potentially it could, because as we saw yesterday, there's only had 26 votes, and 26 votes is the bare minimum what you need to get a bill out of the Senate upon the final vote. And so there's not going to be changes in the House. And this isn't like arguing over a budget appropriation, where like we want $1 billion, we want $500 million. Okay, we'll split the difference at $750 million. This is rape and incest. These are very private, very personal issues. A lot of folks had very private, personal stories on both sides of the aisle that we saw over this past week for abortion rights and against abortion rights. But I don't, like I said, just barely got out of the chamber yesterday. I don't see how they compromise. But then again, we still got a couple weeks to go.
Drew, connected to this, Republicans in both chambers are including tax deductions for adoptions and some funding for various family and maternal health programs.
Yeah.
Does this open the door for more extensive funding of those programs as we head into the next budget year?
Well, at the end of the day, Garrett, adoptions were down in the state before they're even approaching this bill. And so the need that already exists in our state is already underfunded. People aren't adopting children. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have a surplus of kids, of forced birth children, and they're going to have to go into a system that's already underfunded and people are ignoring. And so it really just gets back to this full point, which is the Republicans, they have had 30 years to prepare for this after making all these promises. The dog finally caught the car, and they're caught flat-footed, and what they're producing is not even the bare minimum. It's literally a participation trophy, because they know at the end of the day, what they're doing is going to be forcing women to give birth and changing lives everywhere across the state, when we need to be improving quality of health. What they're doing is making it worse.
Abdul, what happens at this point in the House?
Right now, it goes to the House. They'll take up the measure. We have some House members who are a lot more conservative, some a lot more liberal. I think it's going to be, once again, a division on the Republican side of things. The Democrats will all be united. Like I said, I still think they've got a chance of getting this through. But at the same time, though, it's like Drew said, it's the dog that caught the car. People had 50 years to figure this out. So we'll see what happens. Now, I will also say this. There are a lot of suburban women who do not like this bill, a lot of pro-life women who don't like this bill. So this is a classic.
Abdul, we've got about 45 seconds left here. Drew, I want you to jump in on this as well. What, if anything, comes out of the House?
Well, and Garrett, at the end of the day, I'm going to go back to this. Republicans conducted their own poll. And what it showed is that about 63% of Hoosiers want to keep the state's abortion laws as is. Only 20% want as extreme as what Republicans are going to go. And so Republicans need to release this poll and show Hoosiers that they're actually putting demands, extremist demands, ahead of what people want, because at the end of the day, back to what Abdul said, voters don't want it. Voters do not want this.
Abdul and Drew, stay with us. We're going to talk inflation relief next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back Democrat Drew Anderson and Abdul Hakim Shabazz, conservative commentator and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. The other big story this special session is inflation relief. The House approved legislation to give each taxpayer a $225 tax refund. The Senate's version skips the refund and instead caps the gas tax and suspends the utility sales tax for 6 months. Drew, do either of these end up making much of a difference, especially with gas prices falling?
I mean, it's too little too late, Garrett. At the end of the day, they announced this policy, I think at the beginning of June, saying that they wanted to get it done right away. And then they delayed it 3 times. And they delayed it because they wanted to pursue this abortion agenda, extreme abortion agenda that they're doing. So what's so funny is that you're seeing Governor Holcomb trying to shine this turd that they've created, saying that this relief is needed right away. But you even said just now, Garrett, gas prices are falling. And at the end of the day, Hoosiers were left hanging out high and dry because Republicans aren't addressing this kitchen table issue on time.
Abdul, House and Senate Republicans are so far apart on this one. Is there any chance they'll actually pass something?
Yes. The Senate version basically gives tax relief sort of indirectly through cuts in utility tax suspensions and the gas tax. House Republicans and the governor actually more in line with what Hoosiers want. We did some polling with ARW Strategies this past week. We found that most Hoosiers actually want that $225. Now, it may be a lot to some folks, may not be a lot to other people, but giving folks back more of their own money is actually in the cards. How it happens still remains to be seen in the next couple of weeks.
Here's a question for both of you. Abortion and inflation. How much do each of these factor into November's elections, and how do they affect the party's chances? Drew, let's start with you.
Both are going to be dominant in voters' minds. When you look at inflation overall, Democrats in D.C. we're doing everything we can to combat inflation, especially in those suburban areas of the state where I'm at, like Carmel, Fishers area. Voters are going to be thinking about abortion the whole time. And so it's going to be a 50-50 kind of turnout issue for the midterms, and it really will all depend on how each party turns out this fall.
Abdul, your thoughts?
I say right now 50-50. 50-50 of the abortion issue if you're doing fine inflation-wise. Inflation, obviously, if you're a little bit lesser means. It'll be interesting also to see how this inflation how abortion issue breaks out in state house races. So many districts have been gerrymandered. So there really isn't a whole lot of competition in a lot of these state house districts.
And Abdul, you mentioned some of the polling data you got from ARW. What has that shown you on the inflation and abortion issues so far? And Drew, if we have a little time, I'll have you react to some of those numbers too.
Actually shows most Hoosiers are in line with keeping some or even all abortion or some abortions legal. About 54-40% and some change. But inflation is also, once again, the top issue as well, with most Hoosiers saying they've had to cut back in some places to pay for gas and higher prices.
Drew, your reaction, 30 seconds.
I mean, these poll after poll, whether it's the Republicans poll or public poll, says that Hoosiers want abortion laws to stay as is. So if they're going to go this extreme, there's a huge chance, especially in these donut counties, where voters are going to put abortion ahead of inflation, and that's good for Democrats.
Abdul and Drew, thank you both for joining us this morning. We'll be back after this.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. I will be back with the General Assembly tomorrow as the House begins its debate on the abortion bill. Have a great rest of your weekend.